Prince George is a young boy who has a very big future ahead of him. One day, he will be the King of England. Everyone is very curious to see what kind of man he will grow up to be. While everyone is thinking about George, Meghan Markle is in California. She is working on her new Netflix show called With Love, Meghan. People say she feels very happy because her children come to visit her on the set while she works. She likes having her family close to her while she films her new lifestyle series. It seems like two very different worlds are happening at the same time. On one side, there is a boy getting ready to be a king. On the other side, there is a mom trying to build a new life in Hollywood with her kids by her side. In the royal family, there are very strict rules about how babies are born. When Prince William and Princess Catherine had their children, they followed a very clear plan that has been used for a long time. But everything changed because of only 12 words. Meghan Markle was at a secret meeting in Hollywood with people who help famous people with their stories. She said something that she thought was a secret. She said, "Archie has more spark than George. He was made for the spotlight." She was comparing her son to the boy who will be king. Just 3 days later, the royal family did something that shocked everyone. The names of Archie and Lilibet were suddenly removed from the official website that shows who is next in line for the throne. Their names just vanished without any explanation or warning. That was only the start of a much bigger problem. People are now starting to see that this is not just a small argument between family members. There are many more secrets coming out. We are talking about missing records and money that does not make sense. There is also a very special letter that Queen Elizabeth left behind. This letter was supposed to be a secret, but it is starting to become public now. You will want to stay tuned because this story involves things that were never meant for the world to see. It is like a giant puzzle where the pieces are finally starting to fit together, and the picture they show is very surprising. Here is the true story of what happened. It was early January and Meghan was at a private meeting in Hollywood. This was not a party or a big show for the news. It was a room full of experts who help famous people manage their images. These are people who know how to tell a story and how to make someone look good or bad. Meghan felt very relaxed, like she was talking to friends. There were no cameras or reporters around, so she thought she could say whatever was on her mind. She didn't think she needed to be careful with her words. She thought her secrets were safe in that room. But then she said the words that started the fire. She said that her son Archie has more spark than Prince George. She said Archie was the one who was really meant to be famous and in the spotlight. She dropped this into the conversation like it was a totally normal thing for a mom to say, but it wasn't normal at all. She was talking about Prince George, the boy who will one day be the leader of the whole monarchy. She said this in front of people whose entire jobs are to listen to every word and figure out what it means. Even though she thought she was just chatting, the people in that room knew those words were a big deal. These experts weren't just people who write gossip on the internet. They were very smart strategists. They understand how words can change the way the whole world looks at a person. As soon as Meghan said those 12 words, the trouble began. Within just a few hours, the people in that room started telling others what she said. Some people had even recorded her voice on their phones. The news began to spread very fast. It moved much quicker than Meghan expected. She thought she was just being a proud mom, but the rest of the world saw it as a mean way to talk about the future king. If someone else had said those words, people might have just ignored them. They might have thought it was just a mom being happy about her son. But this was Meghan Markle. She had already done a big interview with Oprah Winfrey where she said many bad things about the royal family. She already had a very broken relationship with the palace. So when she compared her son to the future king, it didn't sound like a nice comment. It sounded like she was trying to start a fight. People thought she was trying to say her son was better than George. The palace didn't shout back or make a big speech. Instead, they stayed very quiet, but they took a very big action by changing the official website. One day, Archie and Lilibet's names were on the list of people who could be king or queen. The next day, they were gone. There was no trace left of them on that page. There was no news report explaining why it happened. It was very awkward. Usually when something like this happens, the family is all together for important events. But this time, names were just erased as if those children had never been part of the family list at all. This move showed that the palace was very serious. They made a traceable change to a public page and didn't say a single word about it. This was their way of sending a very cold and fast message back to Hollywood. When Archie was born, the world was told a very specific story. We were told he was born on May 6, 2019 at a hospital in London. Prince Harry even spoke to the news and looked very happy. He told everyone his son was healthy and that they were doing great. It was a very simple and clean story, and for a long time, everyone believed it. People thought it was a normal royal birth with all the usual traditions. No one had any reason to think anything was wrong. But in the middle of 2025, some secret papers were found that nobody was ever supposed to see. These papers told a very different story. These new papers were from a fertility center in Santa Barbara, California. The date on the papers was April 18, 2019. That is several weeks before Archie was supposed to be born in London. The paperwork had a spot that asked where the baby came from. It did not say Meghan Markle's name. Instead, it said Surrogate A. It also had a note that said a donor was used who was not a relative. Meghan's name was on the paper, but she was listed as the intended parent, not the biological mother. These are two very different things. This tiny detail changed the way people looked at everything that happened next. But that was not the only thing that didn't match up. People realized that there was never a formal royal christening for Archie. Every royal baby before him had a big ceremony with the Church of England and an archbishop. Those events are always written down and photographed for history. But for Archie, there was no record of any of that happening. All the public got to see was one single photo of Meghan, Harry, and Meghan's mom standing in front of a fireplace. People started to wonder why the usual royal steps were missing. It felt like a big part of the story was being kept a secret. At the time, many people thought Harry and Meghan just wanted privacy. They said they wanted their children to grow up like normal kids. That sounded like a good reason, so the public and the media didn't ask too many questions. But now that these papers from California have been found, the privacy excuse looks like it might have been a cover-up. The dates on the papers make people very curious. Why would there be papers from a California center weeks before a baby was born in London? If Meghan was the intended parent instead of the biological mother, it would mean the story they told the world was not the truth. To be clear, there is nothing wrong with using a surrogate to have a baby. Many families do that, and it doesn't mean they love their children any less. But for a royal family, the rules are very different. The laws say that a person must be the biological child of the royal parents to be in line for the throne. These rules have been around for hundreds of years. Because the public was told one story while different papers existed somewhere else, this became a very big problem. It wasn't just gossip anymore. It was about the official records and the laws of the country. The world had been told one thing, but the filing cabinets in California said something else. It turns out the people at the palace were not as surprised as they seemed. They knew more than they were letting on. If we look back to when Harry and Meghan decided to leave the royal family, there was a big meeting called the Sandringham Summit. Behind closed doors, the king and the prince worked out a deal for how the couple would leave. They made an unspoken understanding. This was a deal where both sides agreed to keep things quiet. They promised not to ask too many questions or dig into the past. They wanted a clean break, so everyone could move on with their lives without any more drama. For a little while, the deal worked. Everyone stayed in their own lane. But then in 2021, the Oprah interview happened. Meghan sat down and said things that made the royal family look very bad. She said they were cold and that they didn't help her when she was sad. This was the first time the secret deal started to break. The palace didn't say much in public, but they were very hurt. They felt like they had kept their end of the promise to be quiet, but Meghan was not keeping hers. This interview was the first real crack in the relationship. Then more things happened that made the problem worse. In 2022, there was a big documentary on Netflix. Harry and Meghan showed their own version of why they left. Then in 2023, Harry's book called Spare was published. This book was very different because it was a memoir that used real names and described private family moments. Harry talked about his brother and his father in ways that were not very nice. For the people inside the palace, this felt like a huge betrayal. They had stayed quiet to let the couple live their own lives, but now their own secrets were being sold in a best-selling book. Every time Harry and Meghan did an interview or released a show, it hurt the secret agreement a little bit more. By the time the new paperwork about the surrogate became public, there was no trust left at all. The palace was no longer willing to look the other way or protect the couple's secrets. The deal that was made back in 2020 was officially over. The palace decided it was time to stop being nice and start following the rules exactly as they are written. They were ready to let the truth come out, no matter how messy it might be. Up until this point, the problems were mostly about stories and hurt feelings. But then a new review of how money was spent found something very strange. There was a list of payments sent to a small company called Arch Genesis LLC. Most people have never heard of this company, and it doesn't have a big public office. But when you look at the payments, they tell a very specific story. The records show $95,000 for a surrogacy agency and $110,000 for people to help with the process. There were also almost $200,000 in medical bills. One line showed a payment for $82,000 that raised many more questions than it answered. These were not small amounts of money. They were big payments moving toward a very specific goal. The most interesting part is the timing. Every one of these payments happened right around the same time Archie was supposed to be born in London. But here is the part that really made people gasp. The money didn't come from a private bank account. It came from the budget that was supposed to be for fixing up their house, Frogmore Cottage. This was money meant for a royal building, but it was used for something completely different on the other side of the world. This made the problem much bigger than just a family argument. Using house renovation money for a secret purpose is a very serious thing. When this news came out, the palace couldn't just stay quiet anymore. There was a paper trail with real dates and real amounts of money. It connected all the dots in a way that was very hard to ignore. The people at the palace had tried to keep things calm for years, but the numbers were telling a story that was impossible to hide. They realized that the situation was not going to get better on its own. The facts were right there on the table, and they were saying something that no one on the inside could afford to ignore anymore. While all of this was happening, Meghan was also making her own moves. She filed for a new trademark in California called Royal Reclamation. This was tied to her company Archuel. When people looked at what she wanted to sell, they were very surprised. The list included clothes for kids, family symbols, and even storybooks about children whose royal titles were taken away. But the most shocking thing was a t-shirt for a toddler. It had the words "Future Monarch, just not yours" printed right on the front. This was not about making people feel good. It was a very pointed message. Meghan also released a short video on her Instagram. It looked like a normal video for a fancy brand. It showed Archie running through a beautiful garden with golden sunlight. It looked warm and sweet, but then the video changed. Old footage of Queen Elizabeth's coronation appeared in the background. It was layered underneath the new pictures. At the very end, a caption said, "Royal blood doesn't fade, it fights back." This was a very deliberate choice. Every part of that video was made to send a strong message to the world. It wasn't just a mom sharing a cute moment, it was a statement. Then there was the children's book. It was a picture book that told a story that was very easy to understand if you knew the family. It showed a dark-haired boy standing in the shadows. It also showed a blonde boy getting a crown from a group of happy older people. The story was about a title being taken from a boy who deserved it and given to someone else instead. It didn't use real names, but everyone knew who the story was about. When Princess Catherine saw this, she knew things had reached a boiling point. This wasn't just about being sad anymore. It was a public attack using a children's story. The response from the palace was fast, but they didn't do it in public. They didn't call the news or make a big speech. Instead, they sent out a very strong internal message. They said that no more royal symbols or titles could be used for any of Meghan's products. The line was drawn clearly and firmly. They wanted to make sure that the Sussex brand couldn't use the family's name to sell things or make a political point. Meghan was still in the middle of a big fight, and the palace was finally fighting back by taking away the things she wanted to use. The royal family usually doesn't say much with words, but they say a lot with their actions. In February of 2026, they made some very big moves. Catherine went to a charity event to help children. On the surface, she was just doing her normal job and smiling for the cameras, but people who know about royal symbols noticed something very special. She was wearing a piece of jewelry called the Jubilee Star brooch. This brooch belonged to Queen Elizabeth. It is a very rare and important treasure that is only worn by the Queen or the person who will be the next Queen. Catherine wearing that brooch was a very clear message to Meghan. She didn't have to say a single word. The brooch said that she was the one who was trusted and that she was the one who followed the rules. The choice to wear it was very careful and timed perfectly. Within 2 days, everyone online was talking about it. They realized the conversation had shifted away from Meghan's new brand and back to the traditions of the family. On that same day, King Charles made a firm and private decision about who was on which side of the line. The people who needed to know were told the truth. Catherine also did a quiet interview with a reporter. It wasn't a big show on TV, but some of the things she said were shared later. One important thing she said was, "Every child deserves love, but not every child is destined to lead." She meant that you don't get to be a king or queen just because you feel like it. You have to earn it through service. She didn't use names, but everyone knew she was talking about Archie. Her tone was calm and steady, but her message was as cold as ice. It showed that she was standing strong for the family and its future. A few days later, Princess Charlotte went with her mom on a school visit. She was seen holding a red folder that had a special royal seal on it. It was a small moment, but it showed that the family was not worried or panicking. They were just moving forward and doing their work. This was a big contrast to the drama happening in California. On one side, there were campaigns and videos. On the other side, there was just a family being present and helping their community. This quiet strength ended up saying much more than any loud announcement ever could. Then a very famous letter was found in the royal archives. It had been kept under strict rules and couldn't be opened until certain things happened. Those things finally happened on February 29, 2026. The timing was perfect, as if someone had planned it all along. The envelope was cream-colored and still had its wax seal. On the back, it had 5 words written in handwriting that everyone recognized, to be opened when tested. Inside was a single page written by Queen Elizabeth herself. She had written it just a few weeks before she passed away in 2022. In the letter, the Queen wrote her final wishes in her own voice. She wrote, "Let George bear the crown, let Charlotte uphold its dignity, let Louise protect its grace." Then she wrote a line that was very tough: "Titles not earned are not owed, those who abandon duty cannot claim its privilege." She signed it with her official name, Elizabeth R. This letter was not a legal document, but it meant a lot because it was from the Queen. It showed that she had no doubt about who she trusted to lead the family into the future. For Meghan, this letter felt like a final door being shut on her plans. For years, Meghan had suggested that her children were being left out because of personal feelings or mean rules. But this letter from the Queen showed that it was about duty and trust. The Queen had made her choice very clear before she died. While the palace was dealing with this letter, Meghan was still trying to keep her campaign going. She released a podcast episode, but it was taken down almost immediately. The reason was that she had used a palace photo of Prince George without asking for permission. This mistake made her look even less professional to the people watching. Then Meghan did a live video on the internet. She was wearing a white dress and sitting at a fancy table. She was surrounded by children's books and things that looked like royal crowns, but people noticed that one of the crowns looked exactly like the one Princess Charlotte wears. Comparisons were shared all over the internet. The video was quickly cut off without any explanation. Meanwhile, Prince Harry was seen at the airport all alone. He went to a private meeting with his aunt, Princess Anne. The meeting was very short. When a reporter asked Anne about making up with Harry, she just said, "One cannot reconcile with tactics." When you look at everything that happened, a very clear picture comes out. It is not the picture that Meghan wanted to show the world. It all started with 12 small words that she said in a room she thought was safe. She tried to say her son was better than the future king. From that one moment, a giant avalanche began. It wasn't because the palace was mean. It was because those words were said after years of tension and fighting. The comment didn't start the problem, but it finally broke everything open for everyone to see. Meghan's big plan was to compare Archie to George. She wanted to make it look like one boy was given everything and the other was treated poorly. She wanted people to feel sorry for her baby. She tried to build a brand around this story. She put it on clothes and in books. She wanted everyone to see the difference between the two boys, but her plan required the palace to fight back in public. She wanted them to get angry so she could look like a victim, but they didn't do what she expected. They didn't get loud or defensive. Instead of fighting with words, the palace got even quieter and more careful. They sent a young princess to a school visit. They shared a letter from a queen who had passed away. Every move Meghan made backfired on her. Her brand didn't make people feel sorry for her, it made them turn away. Her podcast and her video didn't work. Through it all, the palace just kept doing what it has always done for 1,000 years. You can't beat an institution that has been telling its own story for that long. The palace doesn't need to win a news cycle, it just needs to keep going. Queen Elizabeth's letter showed that the people at the heart of the family knew exactly what they were doing. They knew who they trusted to lead the future. George, Charlotte, and Louise were the names picked by the Queen herself. This was not a mean move against Archie and Lilibet. It was a statement about where the future of the family lives. Archie was not denied greatness because people were cold. He was left out because royal service is something that has to be lived and earned every single day. The crown doesn't argue or explain itself. It just keeps moving forward with the people who are committed to the job.